Career specialism or career specialization. If you want to know what a career specialism is and you want to know why you should do one and how to do one, then watch this video till the end and you'll get 4 important aspects that you need to know to improve your career. If you want to find and nurture your ideal occupation, business niche, or hobby, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you know whenever a new video comes out. So this takes us to the aspect number 1. What is a career specialism or career specialization? At the end of the day, a specialism is just a focus area that you have, whether it's through your studies or through your work experience. So a potential specialization that you can have, like many people know, is for example in medicine, where you could either be someone who deals with the mind, a neurosurgeon, or someone who studies that, or someone who deals with the heart, a heart surgeon, or for example a generalist when it comes to medicine, like a family doctor or a general practitioner. And much like with your studies, instead of being someone who studies both finance, medicine, and law, you don't quite get to do that, right? Well, no, you focus on one of them. You're either a major in finance, a major in medicine, or a major in law, and there is a good reason for that. Think of a specialization as someone who knows a lot about one narrow subject versus someone who knows a lot about many different subjects. More or less, when you talk about the latter, it tends to be more of someone who knows less about more subjects. So you tend to have a lot of general knowledge, but when it comes to the application of the knowledge in any specific area, you're not going to be able to compete with a person who's a specialist in that area, because a specialist has devoted much more attention, much more study, much more effort to that specific area. And that's why becoming a specialist is important. But before we go more into the why of getting a specialization or becoming a specialist yourself, let's go into aspect number 2, which is what are the types of specializations that you can do. When it comes to the type of specialization that you can do, there are many, but there are 3 major types, and that is the type of specialization that has to do with the branch that you're going into, the type of specialization that has to do with the industry that you're choosing to focus on, and then the type of specialization that has to do with the type of project itself that you are doing. So let me explain a little bit more about these. For example, when you're talking about branches, good potential examples will be medicine and law. For example, you go into law, you become a lawyer, but you could be a patent lawyer, or you could be a family lawyer, or you could be a corporate lawyer, among others. So this means that even though you are a lawyer and you are in the industry of law, so to speak, you have a different branch of it. You have a different vertical within the same industry, so to speak. And that means that you're specializing in a branch of law. Similarly, like we mentioned in medicine, if you're an obstetrician, if you are a family doctor, or if you are a neurosurgeon, you're still in the industry of medicine, but you are focusing on a different branch. And you're specializing in that branch because each branch requires a lot of knowledge, a lot of specialization in terms of study, work, so that you can actually add more value when it comes to that and understand really the nuances within each of those branches. So that's the branching type of specialization. The other one is the industry type of specialization. And that has to do with, let's say you are, for example, an investor. And instead of just talking about stocks and bonds and all kinds of asset classes, you decide to focus on stocks. That is a type of industry or a type of instrument. But you go even further, and instead of just focusing on all kinds of stocks, you focus on international stocks. And maybe you decide to focus on small cap stocks, right, within a certain industry. So that could be, I don't know, small stocks in outside of the United States that have to do with the industry of healthcare, for example, or the industry of oil, right? So you could be a specialist in that particular industry. Now, in this second example, I also did the third type of specialization, which is the project type of specialization or instrument type of specialization. For example, you could be a writer, and maybe you always focus on the same type of industry, but really you focus on the project that you do. Maybe you don't do long form letters, maybe, or articles. Maybe you do a very specific type of writing. Maybe you are a novelist, or maybe you are a short ad writer of some kind, right? or maybe you are a speech writer or a ghost writer. And that is a specialization based on the type of work, not necessarily the branch or the industry, if that makes sense. Now, comment below if this has made sense so far. And if you liked the video so far, remember to hit that like button. So this takes us to the aspect number 3 that you should know when it comes to career specialism, and that is why you should try to specialize. We alluded to it before, but in today's economy, really, it's very important to specialize because being a generalist just isn't enough. For example, if you are getting a divorce, would you prefer a lawyer who knows about a little bit about every subject, someone who doesn't really have a specialization, or would you rather go with a firm that knows what they're doing, someone who already has experience dealing with family law issues and divorcing, specifically divorces? Similarly, when you go to a doctor, you will go to a neurosurgeon if you have a problem that has to do with your head or your brain. You wouldn't go to a generalist. In fact, you will go to the generalist and then they will refer you to a more specialized doctor who knows more about the subject that's affecting you. So in that sense, this is something that you could see through occupations, but also with companies. For example, in the past, you had companies that they were in multiple industries at the same time, right? Maybe even today you have a little bit of that, especially in developing countries. For example, you could see in some places in Latin America, companies that are family companies, but they are in the gasoline sector, they are in the hotel business, they are in the banking business, right? And that makes sense because of certain macroeconomic issues. I don't want to get too deep into that. But that's something that, for example, in the US and other developed countries is no longer the case. Why? Because when it comes to international competitiveness, you really have to get good at one thing so that you can excel at that one thing that you're doing so that you can be above your competition. Because if you are a company that's in multiple industries, it's going to be harder to become the best in every single industry, even if you have a lot of resources. Because if you are a multinational company, another multinational that focuses just on one sector is going to be able to outplay you, and people will start buying from them. Customers will start going for them because they just have either the better prices, the better product, the better marketing, right? So that's something important, even at the company level, much less at the individual level. So that's 2 reasons for why you should specialize. The first one is you yourself, you're going to be able to actually know what you're doing and be able to actually produce a work product that is competitive, that is capable. You wouldn't be able to do a good job in some of the occupations that we've mentioned, for example, or even in business. Would you go to a business that send flowers, but they also send like medical equipment if you're buying medical equipment? Or will you just go to the business that specializes on medical equipment, or the business that specializes in sending flowers, if that makes sense? So even if you're a single individual and you're building a business, or you have an occupation and you want to go into the job market, this is important. You got to come across as someone who has that specialization. And that takes us to that second point, which is not only do you want to specialize because you want to have that capability and develop that competence, but because the way you're perceived by your potential clients or potential customers is also different. Like we mentioned, people will go for those who are focused in their individual problems. It's like saying, okay, I help like women entrepreneurs, for example. Oh, I help women build businesses, versus, oh, I help moms build businesses. Notice how the latter is more specialized, more specific. And yes, you're letting people by the wayside. If they're not moms, they may not be interested. But that means that those who are in that particular niche will be much more interested. And that is not a bad thing. That is actually a good thing, because that means that you are focused, and those whom you are focused on will be more likely to do business with you, versus if you are just a generalist and no one really feels that level of connection with you because you don't seem to be serving just them, if that makes sense. So this takes us to the fourth and last aspect of this video with regards to career specialism or specialization, and that is, which specialization should I get? Well, even if you already know the career you're into, this is a relatively complex question that we've attempted to answer in some ways in other videos. I'll put here a link to another video that's Vocational Guidance Services, in which I describe some of the things that you should keep in mind when you're trying to decide what specialization, what career, or what business niche to go into. But to put a very short description of it, it's basically you gotta find the activity and the industry that you really enjoy, and then you gotta combine that with a potential business or a potential job or occupation that will allow you to live the lifestyle that you want to live and that is according to your personal values. Of course, there are other things to consider like culture, like preferences, but we're not gonna get that deep in this video. If you're interested, subscribe to this channel and hit some of the other videos or playlists that we have posted. And if anything, you can always just comment below and let me know if you would like me to make another video more in-depth with regards to that specific subject. So now you know what a career specialism or career specialization is, where you can specialize, how and why you should specialize. If you found this video useful, remember to hit the like button below, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you know whenever a new video comes out. Also share with your friends or someone that you know who you believe will find this interesting and useful. Bye bye.